there's a couple of plants here I'm particularly proud of. Now keep in mind this is our midsummer, and keep in mind that we've just had the warmest winter ever on record for the Christchurch and Canterbury area. Just to the left there is a castor oil plant. Now I've kept one alive before in Christchurch throughout the winter. I had to build a plastic and wooden frame over it because it doesn't quite grow enough in the first year to deliver seeds. These are a bit of a weed in building sites in Australia. I always like them because they got the big tropical look. They're poisonous if you eat them, drink them or smoke them, but I mean so are many garden plants. So they're just a great decorative plant. And I understand they are grown in England as a decorative plant just for the summer. The other thing, oh, that sprouted just wild by seed because I had one here a couple of years ago. This is a Cape gooseberry plant, Physalis peruviana or Physalis edulis. I'll find a little fruit for you. It's a distant relative of the tomato and the cherry tomato. As you see, this bush, it's gone very floppy. It's planted right close to the wall there, so it's close to 2.5 metres wide and across and 1.5 metres high. Because the winter was so mild, this did not die down much this winter, and normally the winter's enough to kill it back to the ground level and it comes back from the sort of roots, but today, this year, it was already doing so well. I'm just trying to find one of the larger fruits. We'll find one later on from somewhere. Yes, the fruits have all gone. We've got some, there's a few fruits in there somewhere, but they're not really very big. We'll have a closer look at one. Now they're almost ripe, those ones. When the calyx, the outer thing, goes like brown paper, it is ready to eat inside. It's like a little yellowy orange cherry tomato. They're quite nice if you get them when they're ripe. Now there's a number of plants here I'm very happy with. I'm specifically... There we go. That's the advantage of having a really good camera assistant. So that one's still very green and soft. When it turns like brown paper, then it's ready to eat inside. And the chickens, when I had chickens in Australia, they love to eat these, even if they're still green, they'll eat them. And then wherever they poop, they sprout. Now, there was to the right here, that had been a house, a mostly wooden house, but with a brick wall. A brick, because it was built right onto the boundary, it was for fire danger reasons, it was a double brick wall. Of course, in the big earthquake, the brick wall fell out. The house didn't fall down, but most of my garden got trashed. Now, because I've now finally, just under 3 years later, rebuilding, they're building 2 townhouses instead of one big house. A new fence was put here, and so I've been able to tie up some of my bigger plants. Obviously, I like to have a place of my own sometime, and trying to get all the plants ready in big pots and tubs ready for transplanting. It's got quite a few feijoas. I know you can grow them in England, for example. This is the strawberry guava, distant relative of the guava. This also take a bit of cold. This was just a $5 special at the, we have a place here called The Warehouse, which is like Kmart. It's just a shop that sells cheap things. And every now and then I pop into the garden department there and look for some specials. The locust, which they grow in England, but it doesn't give fruit unless it's in a greenhouse there. When the builders and the demolition people dug out and demolished the old place, they just replaced the fill with basically riverbed stones. I have actually still got green scarlet runner beans, summer beans growing in that. I just spread the stones a little bit apart, put in a couple of litres of potting mix and some bean seeds, and they're doing alright. I had the same thing along there earlier with some little poplars. Because there was no fence here at all once the house fell down, once it had been demolished, I just went and got some poplar cuttings, banged them in all the way along, and I had basically an instant free hedge. This table here demonstrates how I propagate a lot of my stuff from cuttings and seeds. A lot of these are actually, an Australian native wattle, or acacia. I should point out that in Australia and New Zealand, acacias are known as wattles. most of these haven't developed their true leaves yet. Well, they haven't developed their adult foliage yet, I should say. Almost all of the Australian wattles or acacias have no thorns, as opposed to the African ones that almost all have thorns. New Zealand doesn't have any true wattles. It has a native plant called the kowai, which is a distant relative of the Australian wattles. Remember, many of the New Zealand native plants are closely related to the native plants of Australia, and in some cases South Africa. This when the builders pulled out the before they built the fence, the temporary hedge of poplar was here, and I had them wrench it out, obviously, when they went to build the fence. I said, I'll just wrench those poplars out. They were just put in as cuttings after the earthquake. And I rounded up a few that looked in still quite good condition. So there's actually 4 quite good sized poplar trees here, which, if my camera operator moves about 2 metres to the left, and then films upwards, you'll see that they're, would that be 10 or 11 feet high? About 3 metres high. They're just growing in a big plastic tub. If things are too big to go in like a 10 litre or 2 gallon plastic bucket, I get these 40 litre plastic tubs from the hardware store and drill a couple of drainage holes in them. So there's a few instant trees if I need them at a later date. This one here to the left, this is a Cootamundra wattle. This is native to southern New South Wales. So Acacia baileyana. Obviously it can tolerate, coming from inland New South Wales, it can tolerate some frost, and it grows quite well here in Christchurch. I've seen these turn into a tree about 6 or 7 metres high, a small tree. And last year this thing gave me so many seeds. I was able to buy this as a little wee $2 one in a nursery. Now, just a reminder, these are Acacia etiophylla. It actually comes from the desert outside Adelaide in South Australia. It is one of the few wattles that would grow where I was in West Australia, because it tolerates frost, drought, salt, any soil type except for sustained waterlogging, heat, and anyway. Several years ago, on one of my trips to New Zealand, I imported some seed. At the time they would let you. You declared it to customs, they take it away and inspect it, and they give it back to you. And I had a handful of those seeds. And several years ago, a couple of years before the earthquake, I got several to sprout. 2 of the plants got crushed and killed in the earthquake, and left me with just 1. And it hadn't yet given me it's never yet given me fertile seed. So those are some of my last remaining seeds, and I've got nearly 40 plants up from there. So I'm quite happy with that. I'll show you the parent plant, which is over here. This one survived the earthquakes, and it's got seeds on it this year. You'll be able to get some close-ups there of these like a pea pod a little bit. Now that's not quite ripe yet, but I moved this under here because 2 winters in a row, in 2011 and in 2012, it was about to give me seed, and we had those unseasonal snows. Remembering we get a bad snow here about once every 30 years, but that's not to say like in 2011 we got 2 of them 3 weeks apart. So I thought I'll put this right close to the brick wall here, and it will give me seed. So there it is, that's good. I'm going to get seed off of that, but I've got lots of little wee ones, about 40 or so, as you can see. This certainly grows in Christchurch, and it's resisted the snow. The foliage resists the snow. My main specialty is palms. Now when you get most palms, when they sprout, are basically like this. A blade of grass. A blade of wrinkly grass. And that's what most palms are like when they sprout. This is actually a date. When you buy packets of dates, and you bite into them, and every now and then you find one with a seed, those seeds are usually fertile, or about 50% of them are fertile. So I planted 4 seeds there that I'd collected over a period of time of eating dates. 2 of them sprouted. One of them died after about a year. So that's a couple of years' growth now. That's the sort of African Arabian date palm, the one that gives a normal edible date. the tree will grow here, but it won't fruit. Now, this is the... I've previously bought, if you can get a shot of these were like about $2 each. Now, it's hard to even buy palms in the South Island. This was sort of like 1 or 2 blades of grass when I bought it. As you see now, it's got sort of a couple of blades of grass there and a new leaf coming up, and the new leaf's getting fatter and fatter. Eventually it turns into a bit of a frond. So these are like $2 each. This is Bootia. They've got these growing on the south coast of England, apparently because of global warming and whatever. It gives it edible fruit. This is the Chinese windmill palm. These were little, but these grow much faster because they're from a cold climate in China. This is a Chinese windmill palm. Normally for one about that big, I guess, I've grown that for a couple of years. That would probably be sort of like a $6 palm if you were getting it here, if you were able to find it for sale. They were just blades of grass when I got them for $2 each. Previously I bought some larger than that for about $20. And I've grown them on for now many years. Now keep in mind that during the earthquake, when that brick wall fell down here, these palms were all smashed down. Now normally if the centre of a palm gets broken, it won't regrow. As it is, they just got smashed to one side. You can see it's still crooked, even after several years, nearly 3 years of regrowth. It's still bent. And most of them I had to put new pots for, the pots were broken. But this is just a larger version of one of those. And if this was for sale in a nursery now, it'd be about $40 for one this size, so about 40, not over 50. This is what I would put in that border garden out the front of Paul's place. This big, it's perfectly fine, it would cope with the London climate, no trouble at all. Ones as small as that smaller one I showed you, I would keep them right up close to the house or in a conservatory till they got bigger. Once they're this big though, hardened off, plant them out in late spring after all danger of frost is past. It will never look back, and it will look like the tall palm trees at 6 minutes 10 seconds on video 4 that was uploaded recently. So, Trachycarpus fortunei, the Chinese windmill palm. Not edible, and a pretty ugly palm tree. Got a couple of cherry trees here, just in 40-litre tubs, and a quince tree at the back. The birds, or native birds, something gets the cherries, I don't seem to get them. I got a couple of cherries last year. There's a little olive tree there, not really into olives. You can just see it poking up. Because I've only got limited space, stuff's really packed in here. You can get away with that in New Zealand, because the sun's quite strong. In England you wouldn't want anything to be shading anything else, I don't think. So this was a $5 olive tree special. Normally they're about $20, I wouldn't buy that, I don't like olives. But for $5 I thought that's alright, I'll take it home. 2 pomegranates here. I loved pomegranates in West Australia. And they should grow very well in Christchurch, and yet there's none. You have to order them in, it's very hard to find them. Because the fruit likes a climate that's dry in summer. Again, it's another fruit, or the tree itself, it tolerates dry soil, frost in winter, salt in the soil, salt in the water, poor soils, extreme heat and drought. So I've got a couple of pomegranates there, and it's taken a lot of... my good pomegranate was crushed. Sorry, my good pomegranate, when the brick wall fell down, I went through tons of bricks, brick by brick. I never found even the remains of it. It was just... Anyway, it was just so crushed, because they will grow from the roots. And it took me a couple of years to get a replacement pomegranate. I only just got one recently, and then I got another one shortly after. So they turn into a large bush, and as with many of the plants I grow, once you get one growing, you can then grow some more from cuttings. So we've got some, this is the thorny boysenberry. I just had to hook it up out of the way while I mowed the lawn yesterday. And a raspberry. And I've got the thornless blackberry. It's actually a plant chimera, which is really interesting in a genetic form. But this is the thornless blackberry, and this one's just in a pot. And I've got some in the front yard that are absolutely huge, and we're going to go over and look at them very shortly. This took a lot of getting. It's a casuarina, sometimes referred to as aloe casuarina. This is a variety of trees found mostly in Australia, but also a little bit in Asia, close in that part of Asia that's close to Australia. They develop the separate male and female trees, and the female trees give cones with seeds. It's totally unrelated to the pine family, although it looks like a pine. If you look at this thing under a microscope, the actual structure of it is totally different to a pine needle. But once they get big enough, they make a, hang on, I'm hooked up on a cactus there. They make a noise in the wind like pine trees do because of the needle-like foliage. This is a variety from, it was the only variety I could find, and they're only available occasionally at specialist nurseries, and even not every year. So I bought 10 of them. One got broken in the earthquake and it didn't regrow, so I've got 9 of them. This is native to Victoria, which is the state around Melbourne, and this can tolerate quite a few degrees of frost, and clearly it grows well here in Christchurch. I've actually seen some growing wild down by the river.
Happy New Year!
Happy New Year to my neighbour!
I'm going to be going in about 2 hours. You're in charge.
Good, thank you for that. So a very friendly neighbour here, and we'll go and we'll look at what's in the front yard.